It sounds poetic, but it's deeply psychological. Waham, delusion, is not a harmless idea floating in the mind. It's a parasite. It feeds on your uncertainty, on your hesitation, on your lack of confrontation with reality. At its core, Waham is nothing but fear, fear dressed up in imagination. You see, fear is biological, it protects you. But Waham is philosophical, it traps you. It builds invisible walls around you, and you mistake them for the limits of your life. Think about it. How many times have you not tried something because your mind whispered, "What if it fails?" That whisper is Waham. There's no evidence of failure, just the suggestion of it, and yet it governs your decision. The irony is, you fear a ghost, a creation of your own mind. The mind, when left unchallenged, becomes a theater of horror. It invents stories that never existed, and because we never question them, they start to feel true. The cure is confrontation. The only way to destroy illusion is to bring it into the light of truth. You must dissect your fear, ask it questions, corner it with logic until it has nowhere left to hide. Truth is brutal, but it's liberating. It will strip away your false beliefs, your comforting lies, your illusions of safety, but in doing so, it will give you strength. Because strength is born only when illusion dies. And here's the deeper point. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the decision to walk through fear, to act despite it. When you do that, you are declaring war against Waham. You are saying, I choose reality over imagination, truth over comfort, and in that moment you evolve. You become more ordered, more capable, more alive. In the end, remember this, your life is not limited by what exists, but by what you imagine might go wrong. Waham wants you to live small. It wants you to hesitate, to retreat, to surrender. But you were not made for that. You were made to confront chaos and bring meaning out of it. The day you stop feeding your illusions, the day you stop believing every fearful thought your mind creates, that's the day you step into freedom. Because Waham was never real, it was only fear pretending to be truth. Illusion, delusion, or false belief is not merely a passing thought. It's a psychological construct that grows in the absence of evidence but thrives on emotion. It begins as a whisper in the mind, a subtle feeling that something might go wrong, that someone might be against you, that fate might be plotting your downfall. Yet, when you examine it closely, you find nothing concrete, no proof, no rational explanation, only an emotion that disguises itself as certainty. This is what makes Waham so dangerous. It presents fear as fact. It convinces you that your imagination is reality. The nature of Waham is parasitic. It feeds on insecurity, uncertainty, and the unknown. The moment you stop demanding proof for your fears, the mind fills the silence with its own stories. Suppose you walk into a room and two people stop talking. Your mind instantly crafts a narrative. They were speaking about me. That's Waham in action. No evidence, no reality, just an emotional assumption. Over time, this mental habit becomes a cage. You begin to see patterns that aren't there, threats that don't exist, and judgments that were never made. The fear feels real, but it's built on nothing but vapor. At its root, Waham is the product of avoidance. When we fail to confront reality, to verify, to question, to challenge our perceptions, we hand power over to imagination. The human brain, in its brilliance, hates uncertainty. It would rather believe a lie than live with doubt. That's why Waham thrives where courage is absent. The moment you lack the strength to face the truth directly, illusion rushes in to fill the gap. The more you avoid evidence, the stronger the illusion grows. What started as a flicker of doubt becomes a raging storm of fear. But here's the paradox. The very thing that can destroy Waham is the one thing we hesitate to use: truth. Truth is the antidote to illusion, but truth requires effort. It demands that you look your fear in the eye and say, "Show me your evidence." When you ask that question, most of your fears collapse under their own emptiness. They have no backbone, no structure, no proof, only emotional inertia. And once you see this clearly, the illusion loses its grip. The mind can't be enslaved by something it no longer believes in. Truth doesn't erase fear immediately, but it gives fear nowhere to hide. So when we say Waham is fear without evidence, we're not making a poetic statement, we're diagnosing a psychological disease. It's the fear of shadows when there's nothing behind them. It's the terror of loss before anything is lost. It's the suspicion of betrayal when loyalty is intact. Waham poisons relationships, kills opportunities, and suffocates inner peace. But the moment you demand evidence, the moment you call fear's bluff, it disintegrates. The illusion dies in the light of truth, and what remains is clarity, calm, and a deeper connection with reality itself. Because freedom doesn't come from escaping fear, it comes from unmasking it. The mind is the most powerful instrument known to man, but that same power, when left ungoverned, becomes a weapon turned inward. Every human being carries within them the capacity to create both angels and monsters, peace and torment. When your mind loses its anchor in truth, it begins to fabricate realities of its own. You start to see danger where none exists, hostility where there is only indifference, failure where there is still possibility. These creations, these mental phantoms, become monsters of your own making. They live not in the outside world, but in the corridors of your imagination, yet they have the power to dictate your behavior, your emotions, and even the course of your life. Monsters of the mind are not born in chaos, they are born in silence. They arise when you stop examining your thoughts, when you let your fears roam unchallenged. A small worry becomes a recurring thought, then an obsession, and finally a conviction. For example, the idea that I'm not good enough begins as a quiet whisper, an echo from a past failure or someone's careless words, but if left unexamined, it mutates. It grows claws and teeth. It becomes a belief that haunts every action you take. You begin to interpret every event through the eyes of that monster. Every rejection confirms your unworthiness. Every silence feels like judgment. Every delay looks like failure. The monster doesn't need to exist outside. It has already taken residence within you. What's tragic is that these monsters don't just distort how you see the world. They distort how you see yourself. They whisper lies that feel like truth. They tell you that you are incapable, unlovable, powerless, and doomed to repeat the same mistakes. And because the mind has the extraordinary ability to make imagined things feel real, you begin to live as if these lies are facts. You withdraw, you hesitate, you sabotage your own progress. The mind becomes both the architect and the prisoner of its own design. In this way, the internal world starts to shape the external one. You no longer respond to life as it is, but as your fears imagine it to be. But here's the reality. The monsters of the mind are not invincible. They draw their strength from your belief, and your belief from your attention. The more you feed them with focus, the stronger they become. The moment you challenge them, question them, confront them, they begin to crumble. That's because no illusion can withstand the discipline of awareness. When you step back and observe your thoughts instead of obeying them, you break their spell. The act of awareness is like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, you see that the monster in the corner was nothing but a shadow cast by your own fear. And this is the great paradox of the human condition. The same mind that creates monsters can also create meaning. The imagination that once terrified you can become the same tool that heals you. The goal, therefore, is not to silence the mind, but to discipline it, to direct its power toward truth rather than illusion, toward creation rather than destruction. Because when the mind is disciplined, it becomes a servant of wisdom. When it is left unchecked, it becomes a factory of nightmares. Every battle you face in life begins in the landscape of your thoughts. If you can win there, If you can face the monsters within, you will find that the world outside loses much of its terror. For no external enemy can harm you more than the monsters your own mind creates. Truth is not gentle. It's fierce, raw, and sometimes cruel. But it's also healing. It burns through illusion like sunlight piercing fog. Waham, on the other hand, survives only in darkness, in the absence of clarity, in the comfort of ignorance. When you dare to face the truth, you dissolve the very environment in which Waham thrives. The moment you bring honesty into your thoughts, into your fears, into your interpretations of life, the illusions begin to die. Because truth and Waham cannot coexist, one exposes, the other hides. Truth liberates you from mental slavery, while Waham feeds on your hesitation to confront reality as it is. Human beings often avoid truth, not because it's invisible, but because it's uncomfortable. The mind prefers the softness of illusion to the hardness of fact. It's easier to believe a comforting lie than to face an unsettling truth. For example, it's easier to think they dislike me than to confront the possibility that you haven't communicated well, or that your fear of rejection has shaped how you behave. Waham offers emotional relief, while truth demands responsibility, yet that relief is short-lived. Illusion gives you comfort in the moment, but chaos in the long run. Truth may sting, but it brings order. It builds a foundation strong enough to bear the weight of reality. The process of embracing truth is not intellectual, it's moral. It requires courage, humility, and self-respect. You must be willing to look at your own flaws, biases, and fears without flinching. You must be able to say, yes, this is my mistake. This is where I deceived myself. That's where the antidote begins to work. Because once you accept that you have participated in your own illusions, you regain power over them. You move from being a victim of your mind to being its master. Truth restores balance. It doesn't just destroy illusion, it rebuilds integrity, one honest thought at a time. It's important to understand that truth isn't simply a collection of facts. It's a way of aligning your perception with reality. When you commit to truth, you begin to see things as they are, not as you fear or wish them to be. You stop interpreting every silence as rejection, every failure as doom, every challenge as defeat. You begin to live with clarity, and clarity is strength. Because once your perception matches reality, your emotions stabilize, your decisions sharpen, and your confidence grows from something genuine. The mind no longer needs to invent explanations or fears. It operates within the light of what is. In the end, truth does not just free you from Waham, it transforms you. It turns pain into wisdom, fear into awareness, and confusion into peace. It's the medicine the soul resists but desperately needs. Waham cannot stand before truth because it's built on fragility. It collapses when questioned. It evaporates when seen clearly. Truth, however, endures. It asks for courage but gives freedom. It asks for honesty but gives strength. When you choose truth over illusion, you don't just escape your fears, you outgrow them. Because truth is not merely the antidote to Waham, it's the foundation of a fearless, meaningful life. Courage has often been misunderstood. People think it means fearlessness, as if the courageous person feels nothing when they face danger, uncertainty, or loss. But that's not true. Real courage is not the absence of fear. It's the decision to move forward despite it. Fear is natural, even necessary. It alerts us to risk, reminds us of our limits, and teaches humility. But illusion, Waham, distorts fear into paralysis. It exaggerates the threat, multiplies the possibilities of failure, and fills the mind with imagined consequences. Courage, therefore, is not about suppressing fear, but about rejecting the lies fear tells you. It's standing in the storm and saying, yes, I am afraid, but this fear will not define my path. When you allow illusion to control you, fear becomes your ruler. You begin to see every challenge through a magnified lens of danger. The fear of speaking becomes the illusion that everyone will mock me. The fear of trying becomes the illusion that I'm not capable. The fear of loss becomes the illusion that I can't survive without this. These illusions are more damaging than fear itself because they transform life into a maze of imagined traps. Courage cuts through that maze. It says I will act not because I am certain, but because I refuse to be enslaved by uncertainty. That is the essence of bravery, not the elimination of emotion, but the mastery of perception. Courage demands clarity. It requires you to see things as they are, not as your fears paint them. A soldier walking into battle, an artist revealing their soul through creation, a person confronting their past, all of them experience fear. What sets them apart is that they don't let illusion dictate their response. They know that the danger they imagine is often greater than the danger that exists. They know that progress, meaning, and transformation lie on the other side of discomfort. So they confront their illusions head on, not to prove they're fearless, but to prove they're free. For freedom is not found in safety. It's found in truth, and truth often begins where comfort ends. To reject illusion, one must first recognize it. That's the hardest part. Illusions are seductive because they disguise themselves as protection. They whisper, "Stay here, don't risk it, don't speak, don't fail." They pretend to shield you from pain, but in reality, they imprison you within it. Courage begins the moment you question that whisper. When you say, "What if this fear is not truth but projection?" In that instant, you begin to separate what's real from what's imagined. You reclaim the power you unknowingly surrendered. You begin to live with intention rather than reaction. Courage is not reckless, it's disciplined. It's a conscious decision to choose reality over the stories your mind creates. Ultimately, courage is the rebellion of truth against illusion. It's the act of standing firm when your inner world screams retreat. It's saying, "I will not let imaginary fears shape my destiny." Through courage, you learn that fear can coexist with action, and that growth is impossible without both. Every great transformation, personal, spiritual, or societal, has been born from individuals who faced illusion and said no. They saw fear, acknowledged it, but refused to bow to it. That's what makes courage sacred. It doesn't erase fear. It redefines your relationship with it. And when you reject illusion, you begin to see fear not as a wall, but as a door, a passage into the stronger, freer version of yourself waiting on the other side. Freedom is not merely the ability to do what you want. It's the ability to see clearly, to live without the chains of illusion. Most people live inside invisible prisons built not by society, not by others, but by their own thoughts. Wehem, the false stories we tell ourselves, are the bars of that cage. Every time you believe a lie born from fear, you feed that prison. Every time you repeat to yourself that you are incapable, unloved, or doomed, you strengthen those walls. The tragedy is that the key to the cage has always been in your hand, but fear convinces you that the door doesn't exist. True freedom begins the moment you stop nourishing the illusions that drain your strength and distort your truth. Wehams are mental parasites. They survive only on the energy you give them, your attention, your emotion, your repetition. The more you think about them, the stronger they become. The more you fear them, the more real they feel. It's like feeding a shadow until it looks like a monster. You can't fight illusion by force. You defeat it by starvation. When you stop feeding your whams, they begin to fade. They lose shape, lose voice, lose control. The energy you once wasted maintaining false beliefs returns to you as clarity, calmness, and confidence. You begin to notice how much space illusion used to occupy in your mind, and how peaceful life feels when that space is reclaimed by truth. The act of starving your wehams is not easy. It requires awareness, the willingness to observe your thoughts without surrendering to them. Every illusion tries to manipulate your attention by provoking emotion. It says, what if this goes wrong? Or what if they think less of you? Courage here means choosing not to feed that thought. You acknowledge it, see it for what it is, a voice with no proof, and you let it pass. This practice transforms the way you relate to your mind. Instead of being dragged by every thought, you begin to lead it. Instead of being enslaved by fear, you become the witness of fear. And in that witnessing, freedom begins to bloom quietly, powerfully, unshakably. Freedom from Weham also changes your relationships with others and the world. When you no longer live through the lens of illusion, you stop assuming, stop overreacting, stop projecting your fears onto people. You start to communicate honestly. You begin to trust without paranoia and love without insecurity. The external world becomes simpler, not because it has changed, but because your perception has. You no longer need validation to feel secure. You no longer misinterpret silence as rejection or difference as threat. You finally understand that peace doesn't come from controlling the world. It comes from mastering your inner world. And mastery begins where illusion ends. In the end, freedom is not something to be earned, it is something to be remembered. You were born free, free of false stories, free of assumptions, free of fear. Over time, life taught you to believe in ghosts that don't exist, and you mistook them for reality. But you can always return to that clarity, to that strength, to that truth. The path is simple, though not easy. Stop feeding your whams. Let them die of hunger. Let truth, awareness, and courage take their place, because when illusion starves, the soul breathes again. And that breath, steady, fearless, alive, is the essence of freedom itself.